As Mark Andrew Archibald William was identified, a man called to answer for his alleged participation in the murder of a judicial official in San Andres Islands, murder in October 2020. The minor portion of the news were provided by the regional director of the prosecutor's office.
La Fiscalía General de la Nación.
The Attorney General's office prosecuted Mark Andrew Archibald William for his participation in the homicide of Judicial Branch official Ademir Paolo Riascos Edna, murder in his home located in the Brooks Hill neighborhood on October 27, 2020. According to the investigation, the victim was at his residence with his two daughters when he was surprised by an unknown person who allegedly entered the place to steal. Apparently, when the victim tried to defend himself, he was wounded with a firearm, as a result of which he died shortly thereafter in the healthcare center of the island. Investigative work conducted by the CTI of the prosecutor office in association with the SIHIN made it possible to establish that Archibald William was the person who was in charge of waiting for and transporting the alleged murder of the motorcycle after the robbery. The defendant was captured by the uniformed members of the Attorney General office and the police on October 15 at the Gustavo Rojas Pinilla International Airport. During the hearings, the alleged suspect did not accept his responsibility for the crime of aggravated homicide in concurrence with the crime of manufacturing, trafficking, and carrying of firearms or ammunition and aggravated robbery charged by the prosecutor office.
At a press conference, the acting governor, Charles Livingston, together with the manager of the Social State Enterprise and the Secretary of Health, informed about the foundation of the renal unit for the Archipelago Department, which according to them will be at the same level as any other in the country.
We have made a big step, a great step towards health. We had signed yesterday the essay, a treaty with an entity to develop in San Andres the unit that will take care of the people that have affliction with kidney. So we want to tell San Andres that in a few months more we'll have that infrastructure working.
We know that the biggest problem we got in San Andres, the high pressure and sugar, and then two sickness produce problem with the kidney. We got plenty people outside they live, and when they're outside they not got the support from their family, because their family stay they live San Andres and then they live in our next city. We can make hemodialysis and we can make the dialysis peritoneal, but even that when time they have dialysis peritoneal, you know, so they can come San Andres and they can work it in the home. Sometimes they need to in our hospital and make it.
In addition, the manager of the departmental SSE gave the respective guidelines for the equipment of the renal unit that will be open thanks to the loan agreement signed. This renal unit will be at the level of any other in the country. There are 30 machines that will be in the room in addition to 2 machines available for continuous hemodialysis, either in the ICU or on the floor, plus a backup machine. We also have the capacity to expand the number of chairs when the demand requires it. We don't have a nephrologist on the island, so we are going to need one because the one who attends comfort consultations and leave the island, and we are going to need to hire one to work directly on the island. We have some nurses with training, and the training should start at the same time in the renal unit is being set up. It is estimated that the renal unit will be assembled in approximately 4 months, where the supplier with whom the contract was signed will be in charge of assembling the equipment and the necessary rooms and consulting rooms, while the SSE will be in charge of the operating unit, for which the hospital staff will be trained and personnel will be hired if it's necessary. In addition, it is expected that around 82 patients will be treated weekly in the new renal unit of the islands.
Excellent news for the department. And for the next week, the Johnny Key Regional Park will be closed to the community as part of the intervention and maintenance process to which the key is subjected every 4 months.
Corallina Corporation, the entity in charge of the operation of the Janiki Regional Park, informed us that the tourist attraction will be temporarily closed next Monday 24th until Wednesday 26th.
Con objetivos específicos como los
With specific objectives such as cleaning and maintenance of the wastewater system, grease traps, maintenance of businesses and commercial establishments, as well as the structures of the corporation itself. This time we are going to perform preventive maintenance quite detailed of its water system. In this order of ideas, we are going to carry out this exhaustive maintenance, change of pipes, and general cleaning of the ducts of the bathrooms. We are going to enable in perfect condition the showers and foot washes that exist in the park.
The Environmental Corporation announced that during these 3 days of provisional closure, tourism providers of the attraction will be trained to improve the experience of the services offered at the site.
And hard coral tissue loss disease now affects more than 30 species of coral in the wider Caribbean. It is rapidly spreading and has high infection and mortality rates in the areas where it occurs. Unfortunately, corals in the waters of the island and Keys also suffer from this disease. So the Ministry of Environment has issued some guidelines to follow.
In order to address one of the main threats to coral reefs in the wider Caribbean and take immediate action to prevent the spread of the disease of hard coral tissue loss, the Ministry of Environment and Sustainable Development has implemented 3 steps to be followed by local authorities to mitigate the risk of the disease. Develop and implement monitoring protocols to strengthen and provide early warning and ongoing monitoring based on international methodologies suggested by the Atlantic and Gulf Reef Rapid Reef Assessment Program and to track disease status. Perform closure of infected dye sites to prevent transmission of the disease from infected to unaffected sites. Establish and ensure compliance with protocols for disinfection of diving equipment before and after the activity. Decontamination methods will offer according to the equipment. Prioritize the protection and restoration of coral ecosystems in the current and future institutional action plans of the environmental authorities. Once antibiotic treatment is initiated, follow up on treated coral colonies to determine effectiveness.
We have already been notified that it is already occurring in the northern Keys of the San Andres archipelago. At that moment, following the recommendation of the international scientific organization that are carrying out the evaluation, we are making a series of protocols together with Corallina and the scientific capacity of the country to be able to prevent the expansion of the disease and an adequate cohesion in the face of this. It is very important that the diving schools, fishermen, and research center can be very attentive to the soft coral disease and to be able to follow the information to alert the environmental organizations to be able to follow up this disease.
Colombia has more than 100,000 hectares of coral reefs. Most are found in the archipelago of San Andres, Providence, and Santa Catalina, San Bernardo, and the Rosario Islands. Coral reefs provide an important number of ecosystem services and contribute to the protection of coastal areas against erosion and interactions with other ecosystems such as seagrasses and mangroves.
And taking into account the recent coral tissue disease that has been occurring since last April in the Archipelago Department, marine biologist Valeria Pizarro visited the islands to give a workshop to Corallina staff and other biologists working to counteract the serious disease in the island's coral colonies.
To counteract coral tissue disease, Valeria Pizarro, a coral expert from an organization in the Bahamas, spent the week working with biologists and personnel from corporations and environmental NGOs to give a workshop on which colonies are affected and how to apply antibiotics that can stop the development of the disease.
The workshop we conducted this week with the purpose of training different organizations, especially Corallina, which is the environmental entity of the archipelago, national natural parks, particularly the people from McBean Park in Providence and Santa Catalina, and an NGO that has been working on the islands called Blue Indigo Foundation. The training is for them to identify the species that are affected, how the disease is presented, but also how to apply antibiotics antibiotic treatment to stop the disease in the colonies that are being affected.
It should be noted that the coral tissue disease has been affecting coral colonies in the Caribbean since the beginning of 2022, killing them very quickly, so it was necessary to extend the information to take quick action to reduce the impact and save as many corals as possible. It is expected that governmental and environmental entities will initiate an action plan of measures to be taken into account the high costs required to cure the affected reefs.
In other news, no new cases of COVID-19 have been reported by the Ministry of Health in the department. The tendency in the last week is to a decrease of new cases. Authorities continue to provide recommendations for self-care, since self-care and prevention depend on everyone.
For several weeks, the Ministry of Health has not reported new cases of COVID-19 in the national count issued for the archipelago of San Andres, Providence, and Santa Catalina. Now, according to information from the latest report of the Secretariat of Health at the departmental level, which is published on the official website, it is not clear which are the active cases. However, they highlight that the occupancy of the intensive care unit of COVID-19 is at 0%. Which has remained so for several weeks, highlighting that this is due to the fact that the department has its vaccination schedules, as well as the local health authorities conduct vaccination campaigns within the hospital and in educational institutions at the same time and invite people to complete their vaccination schedule. Let us remember that in our department, protocols such as the use of face masks are no longer mandatory in enclosed and open spaces.
And now let's get to know other facts that today are making news in our brief news section.
At 3 p.m., the first fashion fair of 2022 will open, where hundreds of entrepreneurs will gather at the convention center of the Hotel Teleislas to showcase their products to the entire island community. For 2 days, different businesses will gather for the public to learn about their offerings. The Secretariat of Mobility and its pedagogical group conducted awareness activities in the different traffic light networks in the central part of the island territory, which is aimed at pedestrians to remember to use the spaces intended for their passage on the road, and to drivers of different vehicles to always respect pedestrian areas. This road educational campaign consists of imparting and reinforcing knowledge about traffic regulations and at the same time improving road behaviors. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, developed the workshop Mitigation Measures in Crops Affected by Hurricanes for the agricultural producers of the island. In the meeting, they socialized topics such as the impact of winds on different crops, how agricultural activities are affected by these conditions, and how producers can prepare and minimize the impact of this type of weather phenomenon.